Hello, all. Welcome to the Pink and Previews Show, your usual Friday night scene setter. This weekend, we're heading up to Lancashire, back up to the northwest as we were last weekend. As the clash of the bottom two. How tantalising, Pad? The clash of the bottom two. Norwich City up at Burnley, and both teams desperately in need of some points. And we've got our very own Sean Dyche impressionist in the house, as we've had a few comments over the years. Is that Sean Dyche? So you have to try and keep the tone of the voice sort of nice and high today, Pad.
Okay, I'll do my best. No, I'll save that till tomorrow. When we're probably going to be apoplectic on the Pinkham podcast. I'm joking. Let's have some positivity. We'll be savouring a win, clearly, when we record that on the way back from Lancashire.
Absolutely. Well, let's hope so. Do get your comments in. We're coming to you hopefully on YouTube, Facebook, and the Pink and Twitter account. I can see a few coming in already on YouTube. Elliot Pearson says evening. Liam Winnell says evening, guys. So yeah, any questions you got for myself and Paddy, we'll try and get through as many of them as we can. But Pad, let's go straight to it. The press conference this lunchtime. What did you make of Daniel's outlook and his vibe? He was same as ever, really. That's one of the things we always say about Farker, isn't it? That high or low, he tends to be pretty similar.
No, I quite liked what I heard today. Now, obviously, we might get a flavour of it tonight with the comments, and we know that's there, that underlying frustration. How big it is amongst the fan base, hard to tell because you're only taking your gauge really from social media a lot of the time. But there is that. So as he's said a couple of times recently, certainly after Watford, he can say anything he wants, but people just don't want to hear it now, do they? They want results. They want, a sense that they can hope for more than they got 2 seasons ago, where they were pretty well off the pace. And we knew the context around that. And we've been told liberally by that man as well that the context around this, it isn't the miracle they're looking for. They can be competitive. So there's not really been a lot of evidence in terms of points on the board for that assertion. So obviously another press conference, more questions about his methods. And I just liked some of the stuff I heard today, actually, if I'm brutally honest. I liked, there was a segment where he was asked kind of, about that frustration and that kind of sense that, is he the right man or what have you? And he kind of took us on a bit of a Back to the Future vibe, I felt, where he kind of painted a scenario where, 4 years ago he walked in and there was, what did he say off the top of my head? He said, there was a very aging squad, a very expensive squad. Financially, they were in the cart as a club, had to sell players, had to then buy into developing younger players. The infrastructure, he said, wasn't great. And all of those things have been radically transformed. And into the bargain, and this is where I thought it was quite interesting, we've not really heard him say this before, 3 titles at this level in the club's history. He's delivered 2 of them. The last 3 years, 2 of those under him have been in the Premier League. And he kind of almost took us into a parallel universe. What if it had been 4 years of consolidation in the Championship, he said, and what if now it was kind of a top 10 club with aspirations to be pushing for the top 6, but still now being able to say, well, we've financially steadied the ship, we've got a young squad, and maybe there's light at the end of the tunnel. And as he said, there might have been a few fans who, looking at the derbies, looking at the Sheffield Wednesdays, dare we say what's happened with Ipswich, might have not accepted that, but kind of been on board with that. But the fact that he's almost in what he was saying was the inference that maybe he's a victim of his own success a little bit, because that him and Stuart and a lot of other people, obviously, and the fans have took it on a bit of a magical mystery tour, really. And as he said, 2 titles, 2 cracks at the Premier League. But the expectations that come with that get massively raised. And now it isn't enough for them to be bottom of the table, played 6, lost 6, with the amount of money they've shelled out. And he knows that. He doesn't need to be told that. They feel the same. It's not good enough. But, for me, I thought that was a fair amount of context, and that doesn't excuse that they need to get some wins on the board very quickly. He knows that better than anyone. And there was other parts of today's presser where it was put on him quite hard. I thought, do you need a vote of confidence? Do you feel you've got enough credit in the bank? He's talked about that a little bit over the last sort of 7 days or so. So that so much wasn't new, but just this sense that is his tenure reaching an end game, and on all of those he was very bullish, I thought, and talked still that he felt he had the trust of the key people and he believed in his methods, and even to the extent where there was an early part of the press, is Norwich a soft touch? Is he unable to know what his best 11 is? And even on those questions / charges, I thought he was decent. So in terms of if we're discussing Farke's performance today, I thought it was very good. But the only performance that matters this weekend is Norwich's team at Burnley from 3:00 on Saturday, and that, to repeat what I said at the outset, is all that matters. He can talk in the most positive tones. He can talk around the contexts of maybe he is a victim of his success to a degree, and maybe if they'd have gone down a different, more measured path, the expectation levels wouldn't be there. But if buts, maybes, that is not the reality. The reality is they're now in the Premier League. They've had, by Norwich standards, a very sizable transfer outlay, and I think we all have a right to expect better than played 6, lost 6. So, good today, but ultimately it's about his team being good tomorrow at Turf Moor, and we all know, we'll get into that in more detail, Dave. I know we all know how difficult an opponent Burnley are going to be, and the style of football that they're going to bring to the table, and Norwich will get asked questions. To this point, all the questions have been asked, they haven't found the answer to, so they certainly need to start doing that. And if they don't, and we're 5:00 Saturday evening and it's played 7 in the Premier League and lost 7, then all the positivity we've heard earlier today, that'll go out the window, and there'll be more and more searing questions. And of course, off the back of tomorrow's game, it's a 2-week break for the international period, and that will be quite an interminably long build-up to Brighton the other side, I'm afraid.
Please no. Just at least a point to avoid all that. While you've reminded me of it, I've got whoscored.com open in front of me here, and it's got the Premier League stats. Ranked number 1 for aerial duels won per game. You guessed it, it's Burnley, way out ahead with 25.2 per game. Ranked 20th for aerial duels won per game. You guessed it, Norwich City with 12. So averaging less than half of the aerial duels won that Burnley do 6 games into the season. So there's always context around stats. It's, style of play and things like that. Norwich don't swing loads of crosses into the box for their striker to try and batter into the back of the net like Chris Wood does for Burnley, for example, do they? But yeah, we'll come back to that because we've got quite a few comments flowing through already. Dominic Kukowski says, any news on Cantwell coming back? Feel he's the creative player we're missing. Can link our midfield and strikers. Todd's just got a little bit of an Achilles strain. He's had these personal issues which have kept him out of things. Daniel said 9 or 10 days of training he missed in the end. So whatever that is, obviously that is private, but he's come back, he's had a sore Achilles. So essentially they just said, let's leave you out of Burnley. Let's have the international break. Let's get you right. Let's get you settled. And then he'll be back in. Zimmerman should be back after the international break. I have got the list in front of me here. Sam Byram is doing a little bit of training, obviously not in context, in contention for this game, and probably won't be until for quite a while yet. He'll need under 23s games and stuff. So you'd have thought for him to have any chance of coming back into contention. Poeta is back in training as well after COVID. He won't be involved tomorrow, but after the international break. The main doubt is Billy Gilmore. He's got a kick to his foot, but Daniel said he was cautiously optimistic on that one. There's a couple of comments which I'll roll into one question for you, Pad, essentially about the defence and the back three. Liam Winnell says, can you see Mr. Farke dropping Hanley at all? And Matthew Whiting says, everyone seems set that we stay with a back 3/back 5. What are the advantages of that tactically over having 2 central defensive midfielders and a back 4?
He'll definitely stay with Hanley. That's the first part. Very staunch defensive in last Friday, I think it was. And I thought he was, in the context of another losing effort, I thought that wasn't the 2 previous games. He was culpable pretty much directly for some of those goals, the Watford game and the Liverpool game and the League Cup. So if you're looking for some glimmers of positivity, I thought he was more solid last week. But then, Everton didn't probe or ask the same type of questions maybe as Watford on the counter and Liverpool to a lesser extent in the League Cup. But there's no doubt Farke feels, I think, he talked when he did defend him quite strongly. I thought last Friday that you've got Aarons, you've got Williams and Kabak now, who despite his pedigree is still only a very young man making his way. Do you want to take out, as Daniel said, a Hanley and then maybe drop in an Omabama Daly? And the inference there was from him that he's not about to do that anytime soon. Then talked obviously more broadly about Hanley's leadership and his influence inside the camp. So no, he will. Well, barring between now and 3:00 tomorrow, there's some sort of issue fitness-wise or of some other nature, he will be starting tomorrow. And the other part of that, I think it will be still the 3/5, depending on if you're in the ascendant or not. It was felt more like a 5 first half at Everton. I felt because they didn't really get out well enough. But second half, before Kenny McLean dallied on that ball in central midfield, it felt more like a 3 with Aarons and Williams. Their starting positions were a lot higher, and that, to me, I felt indicated maybe Farker and the coaches had demanded at half time, and as a result, it did offer a little bit more. But it's an interesting point about that as opposed to the 4-2-3-1. If you want to use the sort of the other formation, it seems to, which is obviously the Farker formation for many seasons now, but with the 2 holders. And I don't know, I'd probably have to go and sit down and think about the tactical nuances of those 2 systems. But ultimately, I think my concern with the 3 at the minute is, and I put that to Daniel earlier today, is it's definitely taking something away. And you could, tongue in cheek, you could say there wasn't a lot to take away on the evidence of this season, but the attacking element, there's times when they play the 3 and the wing-backs aren't getting forward enough and the 3 midfielders aren't supporting higher enough, that a Pukki and a Sargent just look very isolated to me. He obviously changed it second half, brought Jolis and Rashica on, went back to the 4, which is obviously underscores that it isn't just set in stone now, it's 3 from the start of the game to the end of the game. He is willing to change it. And that obviously did feel like it got a bit more support around to the top 2. So that is my concern. Put that to Daniel, and he more or less, I felt his answer was along the lines of, listen, Watford was probably the watershed moment where they just need, by hook or by crook, to keep the back door tighter a lot more than they have done to this point. And almost the focus now is very much without the ball, making them more solid, trying to give them that platform defensively that they then can maybe then the next stage is to look a little bit more at what they can do to support a Pukki, support a Sargent in the forward areas. So I don't know. I mean, we could debate, should it be a 3, should it be a 2? But ultimately, it comes down to players not making stupid individual errors for me. That's what it boils down to. If Kenny McLean doesn't stand on the ball or stumbles on the ball, if Billy Gilmour against Leicester can hold up, can't think off the top of my head, I think it was Iheanacho in the central midfield area, and then they go on and Albrighton slots it. If Norman even, can track a run from Josh King, I think it was, in the second goal for Watford, they're all basic individual errors for me, and a lot of those are central midfield errors. So I'm less willing to buy that, immediately if you go to 4-2-3-1, everything will be hunky-dory in the garden. I don't think that's the case, because we have seen that. We have seen variations on a theme in terms of the formation. It isn't that he's wedded to one system above all others. Whether that is the 4-2-3-1 or the 3-5, the 3-3-3-4, sorry.
It feels like they should be able to flow a bit more. Like it shouldn't be such a big deal which formation they play. Almost that it should be obvious that they can be that bit more flexible, perhaps.
Yeah, but ultimately, I think we're going down a blind alley when we get into these endless debates about formation. It is simply about individuals taking responsibility. And obviously within that, of course, you need the tactical template, depending on the opposition and how they're setting up. Of course you do. But what formation can you legislate for when Kenny McLean makes an individual error, when Billy Gilmour makes an error, when Matthias Norman fails to track a run? They should be the fundamentals. And if you've got individuals, of course, they're all human. They're going to make errors, but it just feels that every single game thus far in the Premier League, errors that actually lead to goals, not errors where they misplace a pass and it goes out of play. These are big errors at big moments in games, and until, for me, those are cut out, then it's almost irrelevant what system they play, because they will still get, at this level, if they're not already aware they should be, they will get punished and punished heavily for errors. Leicester's first goal, Brandon Williams dallying on the ball, Pereira nips it off him, runs past Ben Gibson if he's not there. Hanley fails to sense the danger and the movement of Jamie Vardy. Catalogue of errors. And if they don't cut those out, it really doesn't matter what personnel or even what formation, the end result will be the same. So, yeah, I'm open to whether a 3 is a better fit for this group of players or whether they should revert to the 4-2-3-1. But fundamentally, what they do have to do in whatever formation they use is cut out the errors.
Yeah, big time. Well, there's a couple of comments here. Burnley were bulliers off the pitch, says Jamie Everson on Facebook. Barry Newman. There were good signs against Everton. On a rare occasion, we played 2 up front, but didn't get the ball down to them. Missed creativity, which had last season. And we do lack height and a bit of steel. The players have to stop being nice and be more physical, or Burnley will bully us. So sort of a similar theme there. I'm going to roll these two into one comment, really. But Barry, again, saying, good evening, gents. What would your starting 11 be tomorrow? We still don't appear to have a settled team when you would put most of the names on the team sheet. You've pretty much gone through the team there, haven't you? So I'll answer that. But Spoonmeat has kind of done my job for me, really. Williams, ? He has the skill, but is he ready for the Premier League starts ahead of a Greek international? Or would he be more savvy in understanding the way a team such as Burnley would play? That would be my one change, I think, probably. I would stick with the shape. I would definitely keep the back 3 just for now, just for this game. Not forever, but I think that 3, to be fair to them, need a time to gel, to get an understanding. So Gibson and Hanley, I think it suits them well. Kabak at the moment, I think it suits him to have those 2 alongside him. So I'd stick with that. But I just feel that Williams, I thought that once he got his opportunity, if he played even close to sort of what he's done with Manchester United previously, I thought that he was going to take that and make that place his own. And then Giannoulis may be watching on forlornly from the bench. But I don't think Williams has done enough. I don't think he's taken that opportunity, really. He didn't get into the England under-21 squad, which was announced today. Ashley Cole was at Carrow Road during the Watford game, wasn't he? No doubt watching him because he's part of the under-21s coaching setup. I think Giannoulis gets another chance tomorrow. His experience, maybe he's got that little bit of extra height, a little bit of extra muscle as well. I still think Williams is probably going to be the left back or left wing back over the course of the season, but I think Dimmy's going to get another opportunity to lay his claim down now. I'm just not sure he's shown enough defensively to handle the Premier League so far. I'll go back to another comment to pitch to you, Pad, which was from Tim East. Why don't they swap the roles of Sargent and Pookie and have Sargent roughing up the centre-backs and Pookie picking up the pieces by playing off Sargent? So that's sort of looking at how the 2 of them played last week at Everton. And Daniel did stick up for them a bit today, really, didn't he? Saying that they didn't really have much to thrive off and pointing out that really that's an Everton Rafa Benitez team. You're not going to get a load of chances against them.
No, you're not. No, I mean, that's an interesting point, but when have we ever seen him, bar the odd glimpse, being the deeper line? That's not really Teemu Pukki at Norwich, is it? But then Teemu Pukki at Norwich isn't really back to goal. Can you fight centre-backs, hold them off and bring wingers into play? You know, we all know what Teemu Pukki at his imperious best in the Norwich shirt is, and that was, dare we say his name, Emi Buendia, feeding balls down the channels for superbly timed runs, a la the goal against Watford. Matthias Norman, first time, ball over the top, who's onto it like a flash, then the composure to draw Foster and slot it in post. Instinctive, razor-sharp movement and finishing. That is the man that we know and love, Teemu Pukki, and he's not really being dropped into a side that is allowing him to do that enough this season, anywhere near enough for that matter. So that does feel logical. You know, Sargent is a bigger physical presence and probably would offer more of that aerial ballast. And you could have Pukki playing off him, but I just don't see in Daniel's mind that's how he would go. I mean, he talked about Sargent against Watford, but basically what he allowed is Teemu to have a bit more space, and maybe not that. If you're a Watford backline, for example, or a Burnley backline tomorrow, you haven't got that one up top who is the complete focus for the certainly the central defensive elements of an opposition backline. So almost taking a little bit of the weight off his shoulders. But yeah, it didn't really work against Everton, I didn't think. I mean, they were game and they were trying to pick up pockets of space, but really there wasn't I didn't think enough link play coming from central midfield or even wider areas for all the promise when Rashica and Jolis goes on. I mean, there was one that said, there was Jolis's first meaningful act I felt in the game. He got to the byline, put a wonderful ball right across the 6-yard box, and there was no takers. And you sort of left scratching your head. Why, two strikers? Surely they're the type of movements you would like. But again, that isn't really Teemu Pukki, is it? Meeting balls from wide areas. So probably goes back to what I said a little bit earlier, that it just feels at the minute in Daniel's mind, and that's the only man who really matters in this debate, is it's all about, can they be more robust defensively and stop cutting out or stop conceding soft goals. And if they can manage to do that for a period of however many games, then you're almost feeling, okay, the foundations are now in place. Now we can maybe, as a coaching staff and as a group of players on the training pitch at Colney, look to try and unpick what they're doing at the top end of the pitch, which isn't, I don't think anybody could justifiably argue you're getting the best out of Teemu Pukki by playing him with his back to goal. That's just not the case at all. But it's kind of needs must at the minute. But I'm with you. I don't think bar the left back or left wing back, there'll be too much in the way of changes, really. I think because it's Burnley, because you need that physical presence, I think McLean will probably get a reprieve because he offers that. And he is decent defensively, aerially.
And he surely won't make 3 ricks in a row.
Well, you'd hope not. But I do my mind is go back to the Burnley League game 2 seasons ago, where he was supposed to be screening at the near post. I think it was the Chris Wood goal, and just jumped under the ball. So we don't want any repeat of that tomorrow. But I think that's why he is likely to retain his place. And certainly the defensive 3, if it is going to be the land of the giants and balls getting pumped in at every available opportunity, you're going to need certainly Hanley and Kabak's physical presence in that aerial defensive, because Aarons and Williams / Unulis aren't going to really offer you that. So, for that reason, I think it'll be a pretty similar 11 to what we saw against Everton. But ultimately, I saw it with a different outcome. As Daniel said, I think it was put to him that Burnley have scored 5 Premier League goals this season. 4 of those have come from either directly from set pieces or additional phases of play from a set piece. So you know what's coming tomorrow. If Norwich can nullify that, you also feel that they will get enough of the ball that they should be able to create chances. But we kind of feel like we've been here pretty much every game this season, bar maybe the Man City one, which I think even the most optimistic Norwich fan felt was probably going to be damage control. So far, they just haven't, over the entirety of a 90-minute game, managed to put it together. And if they don't do that tomorrow, they'll get no sympathy from Deitch and his mob. They will any vulnerability at all defensively, they will pounce on it. And as I've seen in a few of the comments, they will bully Norwich tomorrow if Norwich allow themselves to be bullied.
Yeah, it's quite literally that sort of you got to, as the Beastie Boys would say, you got to fight for your right to party tomorrow, haven't you? If Norwich are going to play the football they want to play, they have got to match them up in terms of the physical fight as well. And I liked what Daniel had to say, in terms of his praise of Burnley, that Dyche not being a flag in the wind, as he was saying it, in that everyone knows exactly what Burnley are going to do, but they stick to it all the time, don't they? It's a different philosophy to what Norwich have got, but they're doing the same thing. They are sticking to their philosophy all the time, and they're very consistent. And to steal something that is in my column in tomorrow's papers, I had a look back on the team of that they played against Norwich 2 years ago in that 2-0 defeat at Turf Moor, when Norwich were full of the joys of, well, not spring, autumn, because they'd beaten Manchester City 3-2 the week before, turned up at Turf Moor, got absolutely bullied and couldn't play the football they wanted to play. That team, and I compared it with the Leicester team, the team that drew at Leicester last weekend, 7 of that 11 still starting 2 years later for Dyche, and 3 of the 4 who weren't were on the bench. The only one who's gone is Jeff Hendrick. So they are very steady, very settled. It's very much evolution over revolution with Burnley, isn't it? I think they deserve a lot of respect. It's not particularly attractive football, obviously, but they deserve a lot of respect for the way that they've done it, and they're trying to get a 7th successive season in the Premier League. That is what Norwich desperately need, isn't it? As a self-funded club, if they're ever going to build to be something like a club that can dream of expanding the stadium and chasing Europe and stuff, that's the sort of longevity you need, isn't it? And equally maybe attracting foreign investment or something. But that's a bigger conversation. Let's get stuck into a few more of the comments. Jamie Everson, sorry for my forgetfulness, lads. Currently got COVID. Well, rest up, Jamie. I hope you're better soon to start with. Why doesn't the young lad who played left back last season not get a go in his proper position? I think you're referring to Jacob Sorensen, and that's really the issue, is that he's not a left back. He was filling in as emergency cover at left back. He's a midfielder. He wants to be a defensive midfielder. That's where he's played the majority of his career. And we saw a few times last season, as well as he persevered, and he did do well in quite a few of the games, he also did get given a bit of a torrid time by some of the more out-and-out wingers like Ismail Assar for Watford and things like that. Amanda T says, where's Cantwell? And come on, Grant, play like you did for Scotland. In case you missed it earlier, Amanda, Todd missed 9 or 10 days of training because of the personal issues he's got at the moment. Sore Achilles, so he misses this weekend, but he should be fine after the international break. David Howe's got it sorted on YouTube. We need to mark the strikers well, and the fullbacks keep goal side of the attacking forwards and stop losing the ball in midfield. I think we can all agree with that, and I think Daniel would agree with that one as well.
Simple game, isn't it, Dave?
It should be. It should be. But nowadays, it's the very subtle tactical differences, isn't it? You know, I can't remember which podcast I was listening to during the week. It might have been the Guardian Football Weekly, and they were talking about the top level coaches like Guardiola and Tuchel. They spot little tactical things that are going on that we don't even see. Those who are sort of not trained up to UEFA Pro license level or whatever, they spot little things in a game that we don't even notice. Anyway, I digress. This is the one I was going to put to you. A positive, perhaps, Pad, for us to talk about, because there's not many. Julian Scott. Norman's willingness to take a shot was refreshing after all the fruitless tippy-tappy around the opposition box. He made a mistake with the penalty, but Kabak... he's going on to talk about Kabak now. He made a mistake with the penalty, but Kabak nevertheless impressed me with his drives forward. Something different. Yeah, I think from what we've seen of those two lads, Pad, I think as a starting point, you can say that they both look like quality additions, like they're upgrades on what Norwich had, if they can get their feet under the table and establish themselves in the Premier League, which obviously is going to need Norwich's form to pick up.
100%, yeah, and obviously you don't want to run away with on the evidence, which is still a very small sample with both of those in a green and yellow shirt. But there's no doubt for me, both of those, if fit, play now, and it's for others to sort of try and oust them, really, because ultimately, I think that is probably one of the major sources of frustration. I think is that they look like they have made some very decent signings this summer. Jolis as well. I mean, I know he's a young man. I know, that Danny wasn't overly impressed with his antics over the penalty against Liverpool, but he looks to have something about it. And if Daniel himself is saying potentially he's world class and he's in his position for his age as good as anything in Europe, let's use him. Let's use him because I don't think Norwich, in the situation they're in, can really afford half a season to almost incrementally get these guys bedded in and on the same wavelength. It needs to happen, and pretty swiftly for all concerned, really. So the fact that they still sit there with no points at all on the board, it just underlines how difficult it has been thus far for, without wanting it to sound like excuses, but the fact that, and Daniel did touch on this today, all of those I've just mentioned, they all came Josh Sargent. They came pretty late in the window. A very disruptive pre-season. We've heard it all before, but not even going to get into the tough fixture list. But setting aside whether you're pro or anti-Farke, they are all justifiable factors in why Norwich currently sit here with no points from 6 games. So, but obviously with each passing week, purely in terms of the new players and integrating them, that should be getting a lot easier. And I think certainly Norman, of the clutch who came in, he really doesn't look like he's needed too much time to acclimatise. The only issue with him is, you spoke to him after the game at Everton, is maybe the physicality and the intensity of what's required for a central midfielder in the English Premier League. He's just finding that a little bit of a struggle to last the 90 minutes in a game. Came off midway through at Goodison with cramp, and there's no doubt, Norwich's chances of getting a result probably left with him, because he was increasingly the influential figure in that Norwich team in the second half, both in terms of without the ball, and as that question certainly pointed out, he was really their most likely way to a goal by his willingness to get forward, get to the edge of the box and test Pickford. So, yeah, there's no doubt those two you've mentioned are upgrades on what they currently have in the group, but it's going to take a lot more than that, isn't it, to come out the other side with, what we all hope is another season of Premier League football for Norwich. But yeah, if you want to cling to a positive or two, then certainly Norman. And Kabak, I think I do like his adventure with the ball, but it has to be in the right areas, and you can tell the action on the penalty. Maybe that's a player who hasn't played a lot of competitive football, since April. Injured, and then he was out of the picture at Schalke, and maybe he's just finding his feet literally as well. But I think there's enough evidence from him, and certainly from Norman's performances, that they do look like two players who will improve Norwich in the mid to longer term. But you just like it to be in the short term as well in terms of results.
Yeah, I'm hoping that Norman finds his range this week, or he beats the keeper at least this week, because they were both good shots against Pickford. Because then with the new Bond film out, you've got "From Russia with Love" headlines just waiting to be written, haven't you? Nick Great Tricks. Yeah, I think I pronounced that correctly. Points out that I misunderstood Jamie's comment, and he's correct. So what Jamie meant was, why is Sorensen not getting a chance in his preferred position of central defensive midfield? I toyed with this earlier, to be honest, when I was writing my column, that should he be coming in for McLean, given McLean's mistakes, that he's got that size on his side, that because of that stint at left back last season, he would be well qualified to be the left of that midfield three. He's got the physicality. He can use the ball well enough. Maybe he'd be a good man to play it. But I'd be surprised, just because he hasn't played much football. He missed the Watford game with the dead leg, but he signed a new contract in the summer and things. I do think he maybe will feel a little bit hard done by that he hasn't got more opportunities, but we'll see. He's still young. He's 23, and if Farke thought that he was ready for Premier League battle, I think we would have seen him at some point by now. But the one thing we can say, to follow on from what we were saying earlier, is that McLean has got to have a good game, really, isn't he? He can't afford another slip, really, because the pressure's on him a little bit. But we all know that he's good character, that he's very much valued by Farke. So that'll be interesting to see that evolves. And again, the shape is going to play into that. Amanda T says it's going to be tough against Chris Wood, which of course it is going to be. And I will roll another couple into one, Pad. Barry Newman there talking about the fact that Farke is maybe a little bit quiet compared to some managers, that Benitez and the Watford manager were very vocal. And then quite a simple question from Zachary Deder. How would you suggest Daniel Farke helps the players cut down on those individual errors that have been our undoing? I mean, confidence is as simple as that.
Well, it's certainly one of the factors. It's seems seemingly a very glaringly obvious question, but if he could find the answer to it, then I don't want to sort of forensically go back through all the games, but Everton, McLean doesn't do what he did, and Kabak doesn't do what he did, then again we're getting into ifs, buts, and maybes, aren't we? But the reality is, you take those two errors out. Did Everton look like they had enough to break Norwich down? Not for me. I think the crowd, if it had been level going into the second half, you can guarantee that home crowd, on the back of getting whacked 3-0 at Aston Villa and going out of the League Cup, they would have been on Benitez and those home players. That would have played into Norwich's hands. So, yeah, it is really, for me, I've said it, it's really as simple as eradicating as much as you can, not individual errors per se, but key individual errors, losses of the ball in really dangerous positions, doing what Kabak did and conceding penalties, with the technology that's available now and how it's been implemented. You just can't take the risk to do what he tried to do in the box, however well-intentioned he was to clear the ball rather than connect with Allen. But how Daniel does that, I guess ultimately it's if the same players keep making the same mistakes, and this is why McLean may be in the last chance saloon, then you have to replace them, don't you, ultimately? But certainly the first port of call must be to try and boost their confidence, try and put the arm around the shoulder rather than, the boots up the backside. So, but ultimately, if players are really making the same mistakes all the time, then I'm afraid, you have to change it up. And then you really put your faith in that what you've tried to do with Stuart and the recruitment guys over the summer and equip the squad with far greater depth in terms of quality, as opposed to quantity, that there are players who could come in and the level wouldn't drop. But ultimately, where the level is at the minute is nowhere near good enough. So I don't think any of these players really who have been getting consistent game time, if the results don't change and change quickly, could they really knock on Farke's door and say, why am I out of the side now? I don't think so. So, but yeah, basic errors in very dangerous areas of the pitch in the Premier League, I'm sorry, there's only going to be one outcome, and the penny needs to drop pretty quickly.
Absolutely. And David Berman flows into what we were talking about a bit earlier. Farke needs to decide on his best 11 and try to stick to it, barring injuries. Inconsistent team selection does not help, especially with new players trying to gel. Now, I can't work out whether this is a good time to play them or not, Pad, because we put the tweet out earlier in the week, didn't we, pointing out that it was 13 home games in the Premier League that Burnley haven't won, and immediately we got a flood of along come Norwich responses, didn't we? Which is sort of the expectation and the fear almost. That shows how much the Premier League has scarred Norwich fans in recent years. But they are probably going to be missing Maxwell Cornet, who was their sort of headline summer signing, really, and he scored a really good volley at Leicester last weekend, didn't they? Yeah. He's probably going to miss with a hamstring. It sounds like Matej Vidra will be okay. I can't see that it's going to be helpful for Norwich, is it? Because anybody that plays Norwich at the moment, until they get a win on the board, until they get a foothold, are going to smell blood in the water to a certain extent, aren't they?
Oh, 100%, and none more so than a Dyche and a Burnley team. I mean, my mind goes back to, I think it was the final Norwich home game of the Premier League 2 seasons ago. The infamous Buendia red card, Dermich red card, and that previous point that was made about coaches on the sidelines being so animated and getting into their players. But Dyche, that was obviously Project Restart, so it was an empty car road. But prior to those kind of decisions, the Buendia one particularly, Dyche was just constantly in the ears of the fourth official, the referee, and trying to exert that pressure. And just that almost horrible, gnarled kind of, approach to I'd kick my granny to get 3 points type of vibe. It's the old saying about your teams are casting the image of your head coach / manager. Well, that is Burnley, isn't it? They will fight and scrap, and they don't care who they upset. They don't care if they're. I mean, when we went to Burnley that season, there's a chant about along the lines. It's not quite on the Millwall. No one likes us, but it was the home fans seem to have latched onto a chant along the lines of, yeah, so you don't like us, you don't like our style of football or brand of football. Well, tough kind of thing, it's effective, and I don't know how many seasons they've clocked on now consistently in the Premier League. And Dyche tomorrow, 400 games in charge. It's a phenomenal achievement. Whether you like the brand of football, whether you like him as a coach or even as a man who conducts himself, in the media, you cannot dispute the longevity at this level. And as Daniel said today, it's similar to what Norwich did. They went up, wasn't able to stay up, came back down, rebuilt, went back again, and have managed to stay up. So, there is a way forward for a club like Norwich, albeit not the same self-sufficient model. They've got new ownership in place, haven't they? Now they've all, as the Cornet signing indicated, they're maybe potentially going to spend a few more than they have done recently. So it'll be interesting how Dyche handles that next phase at Turf Moor. But there's no doubt it's going to be everything. If we all had a blank sheet of paper now in front of us and we just wrote down what we thought we were going to get from Burnley tomorrow, I don't think that'll be too far away from what they do actually get. So if we can all decipher what a Burnley team under Dyche is going to bring to the table tomorrow, then surely to God, Daniel Farke and his players know what's coming. The big question, can they counteract that? Do they have enough in their armoury to deal with the physical threat, to repel them on their set pieces, and then to really show a bit of bite at the other end of the pitch? And at the minute, it feels more hope than expectation, if we're honest, because I don't think we've seen enough evidence that they are physically robust enough. I thought Watford bullied them at stages at Carrow Road two games ago. Big, physical, imposing players. Everton had them in the middle of the park as well last week.
Yeah, Decore was good, wasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. And defensively as well, they were very robust. It does feel Norwich as a collective are a little bit too lightweight at the minute, and heaven help them if they exhibit those traits tomorrow, because they will be swiftly found out, and it won't matter what the possession stats say or how many chances they maybe fashion. Ultimately, if they get beaten up and bullied on a couple of set pieces, that could be the difference tomorrow. So, yeah, it's very intriguing because as I say, you go more with as the penny dropped this week, and are they able to muster what we haven't hitherto seen enough of, or is it going to be more of the same? And if they aren't able to change the mood music or alter what they've been able to produce so far at this level, then it will go the same way as all the other 6 games, and that'll be ultimately another defeat.
Yeah, I'm going to read this one out because I hope we remember this one. I hope this comes back. Liam Winnell, imagine the scenes if Gibson scores the winner and shushes Dyche. That would be very nice. I don't think Ben would do that. I think he's too much of a sort of stand-up guy, isn't he, to go and do. And I don't. It would be a brave man to do that to Sean Dyche as well, because I wouldn't be surprised if he told you to do one. But yeah, I've got no issue with the way that they are quite aggressive and the way they get into the referee and things like that on the sideline. They're not the only team to do it by far. We saw a lot of it in the Championship last season, didn't we, when Norwich were the favourites for most games. I just think that's football. That's being streetwise, isn't it? That's putting pressure on the opposition team. Maybe Norwich are just a little bit too nice. And Farke does explode at times on the touchline, but sometimes it's with the ref, sometimes it's with his own players. Ed Wootton, the goalkeeper coach, is sort of the chief cheerleader almost, isn't he? He's the one who is barracking the linesman and the fourth official and things like that. Maybe they need to just up that intensity a little bit, because it does sort of send a message, set a tone, that sort of thing. We'll be with you for another few minutes. We're trying to keep it to about the length of one half of football, and we're closing in on 45 minutes already. Just a few final comments. Ben Trafford, could Kabak play as a defensive midfielder alongside Norman? Add some strength and proper screening. I think that would be called a reverse Ben Godfrey, wouldn't it? Converting a centre-back to a defensive midfielder. I can see your point. He's probably got the attributes to do it. I can't see that happening anytime soon, to be honest, given the way that Daniel has approached the season so far. David Berman, we need to work harder off the ball as well in closing down players and tracking back. And I think there was another comment which was similar to that, but I lost that one. That must have been further back. Jamie asks, is Robbie Brady still at Burnley? No, he's not. He was released. He had a lot of injury problems. He was linked with a move to Turkey in the summer break, but I don't think that actually happened in the end. And I'll just mention as well, the under-23 is playing tonight. You probably saw that Connor was at the Walks Monday night. They lost 5-2 to West Brom. Same team, no senior involvement in that one. Jonathan Tomkinson captaining at the back, but that's pretty much the same settled team they've had throughout the start to the season, and they've been doing pretty well. They play Fulham tonight again at the Walks in Kings Lynn, so you got 45 minutes to get there if you want to make kickoff for that one. And I just wanted to close on, Pad, really the to get sort of your thoughts really, and on and what Daniel was saying about it today in terms of the restructure that we've seen behind the scenes. Neil Adams becoming the assistant sporting director, Andy Hughes taking on the loans manager role, and Lee Dunn stepping up to be head of recruitment. Daniel said some nice stuff about that today, didn't he? But what did you sort of make of it and the reaction from Norwich fans? I don't think I've seen sort of too much negativity around it, although there's certainly some people who obviously associate Neil Adams now with Premier League relegation and failing to get promotion and things like that. But that feels maybe a bit harsh.
Well, I think that season that we're talking about, who comes in, Alex Neil, and takes more or less Neil Adams' squad to the Premier League via the playoffs, the Championship. Now, I know obviously that's Alex Neil's legacy, but the building blocks were there, the players were there. So I think that would be a tad harsh. No, what I, of all the various quotes and reports that have been around that since the announcement dropped, I thought the one that stood out for me was Neil himself when he said, essentially, what is this job now? It is Stuart's assistant, covering the whole range of all the football departments, essentially. And as he said himself, he was a player for Norwich. He knows what that's all about. Okay, different era, but fundamentally, he knows what it's like to cross that white line. He was a coach in the academy and still the only man in 30, 40 years to land an FA Youth Cup, lest we forget. Fantastic achievement that was with that group of players. And he's obviously, whether you think it was a success or not, probably not on the balance, but he has been a first-team manager / coach. So he knows that aspect. And, of course, in recent times, he has been the loans manager. So I don't think there's anyone better qualified, really, that they could have found with the DNA about they know what Norwich is about as a club and how it ticks, and the personnel and the fan base to come in and assist Stuart. And as Daniel said today, when we asked him for his reaction, he's been basically on at Stuart for quite some time to almost try and get somebody to share the load, because, as he said, in many another club around Europe, there would be multiple people doing those roles that essentially he has been doing, and that's a lot of heavy lifting that he's had to do. And clearly, the other appointments are sort of more with the recruitment element, which is obviously post Kieran Scott's departure at Middlesbrough. But I think, Andy Hughes coming in and Lee Dunn sort of stepping up, that's pretty much been happening for a number of weeks now, really, behind the scenes. It's not suddenly this week. They've thrown the pieces all up in the air, and we'll see how they land. I think this week was just a formal announcement, but really, pretty much since it would appear Kieran had indicated Middlesbrough was where he was going to go. That was pretty early on in the summer, and from that point onwards, I think they've been moving down this path anyway. So it is really more of the same. I don't think there's any great change that's been seen. Pretty much the pillars that were in place for certainly the mid to latter part of the last window, that's essentially what we've been put into the public domain in recent days. So, all that business that happened sort of mid to back end of the summer, that was really with this structure in place. So, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes. We were privy to some briefings which ahead of this announcement, where it was kind of portrayed that, Stuart, this would now free him up to maybe go to a South America and go and watch a Copa Libertadores or a Copa America and do a block of scouting himself, which hitherto he simply wouldn't have been able to spend that amount of time away from Colney, away from the football club. So if ultimately it allows Norwich to maybe go into a market and maybe even drill down further than they already have with their recruitment network, then that has to be a good thing, really. So the proof will be in the pudding. But yeah, I think it's safe to say you look at Colney now and the redevelopment of it and the bricks and mortar and the academy structure as well. Obviously, the lads playing tonight, and they've started reasonably well this season, I feel, in terms of results. So, there's a lot of good things happening below first team level. And really, this is just a continuation of that, I think. I don't think there's going to be a massive sea change in terms of how things are done. And Daniel, just a final point from me, Daniel pretty much emphasised that. He said he'd more or less been working with Neil Adams in his role as loans manager, so the relationship is there. And they clearly get on a personal level very well, reading between the lines. So, as do Neil and Stuart. They've forged quite a close bond in the last 12, 18 months or so, maybe even a bit longer since Neil's been doing this loans manager job. So, it feels pretty much like common sense. So, we'll see how it pans out. But it's in terms of the first team and the impact it's going to have there, it's not really about that. It's more about that holistic kind of building a club which is around more than 90 minutes on a Saturday and 3 points. It's about the mid to longer term and putting a structure in place that irrespective of people come and go in various positions at that club, but the actual overall philosophy and culture remains the same. And that's why you need to get these type of appointments spot on. And I think Neil Adams, whether you rated him as a head coach or not, I don't think Norwich could be in safer hands, really, to have him, in that position, assisting Stuart.
Absolutely. Good stuff. Thank you, Pad. Thank you very much for watching. We'll, of course, have all the usual stuff for you going on at pinkin.com and in the papers on Monday. All the coverage of tomorrow's match at Burnley. We'll have the NCFC live blog, Paddy's pointers on the final whistle, our new look match report, video verdict over on all the channels that you're watching on at the moment, on YouTube, Facebook or Twitter on the Pinkin channels. And if you don't follow us on Instagram already, then do as well. We're giving that a bit of love at the moment. You may have noticed earlier in the week that we've got a new man on board, Adam Harvey, who we've lost Tony. We've lost one video guru, and now Adam's stepping up to the mark to see if we can give him that title in a few weeks once he gets up to speed. But he'll be making appearances in these videos and on the podcast and things like that over the weeks. He's a big Norwich City fan as well. So a little bit of a change on our end as well. But do follow it all with us throughout tomorrow. And fingers crossed, we're not talking about a 7th successive defeat, because I'm not looking forward to that international break if it is. Thanks for watching.